It's the beginning, the opening salvo, if you will. They've indicated that one of the next towns that could be targeted could be Aurora, Colorado, where over the weekend, quote, hundreds of community members gathered in the snowy cold Saturday at Fletcher Plaza to protest Donald Trump's threat of mass deportations, a rally that drew as many as 700 immigrants, activists, and allies. Joining our coverage is Democratic Congressman Jason Crow, who represents Aurora, Colorado. First, what are you hearing from your constituents?
Well, Nicole, I represent one of the most diverse communities in the country, right? And I just want to paint a picture for you. This is a community where nearly 20% of my constituents were born outside of the United States. I have 130 languages spoken in my public school system, right? And these folks are business owners. They go to school with my kids. They work in our businesses. They are so much a part of the lifeblood and the strength and the vibrancy of our community, and they are afraid. Which is why I'm standing up and I'm being very clear about what we're going to tolerate and what we won't. You know, and I think this is important for every American right now to be really clear about what it is we're dealing with. I haven't heard or talked to anybody who says we shouldn't deport and detain violent criminals, that we shouldn't clean up our streets and keep communities, keep our children safe. Everybody agrees on that, and it's already a crime. What we're talking about is a mass deportation that's rounding up everybody, children, families, business owners. And I would like somebody in the Trump administration to explain to me how doing that is actually going to reduce costs, help our businesses, help our communities, and make us more safe. Because doing that will do the exact opposite, and they know it.
So what is a list of what you will tolerate and will not for your district?
Well, I'm not going to tolerate mass deportation efforts of children and families and people who are striving to start a life here, who want to normalize their status within the United States. We owe those folks comprehensive immigration reform because that's in our best interest of our economy. Right? I spend a lot of time with small business owners. You know, Colorado is a small business state. Aurora is a small business state. 85% of our workers and our businesses are small businesses in my community. Right? And those folks, when I go and visit them, they say their number one problem is workforce. They want to grow their businesses. They can't find enough workforce. So we owe comprehensive immigration reform. That's visas, that's DACA programs, that's providing a pathway to citizenship who are here, who own homes, who are already paying taxes to normalize their status because that's what they want to do. And that's what's in the best interest of our economy. What I won't tolerate, and what nobody should, is violent criminals, right? Yes, go after violent criminals. It's already against the law. And guess what? We had a bipartisan reform effort in Congress last year that was heavily negotiated between Republicans and Democrats that would have provided more enforcement, would have provided more border security, would have provided pathways to citizenship. Donald Trump blew it up because he'd rather run a campaign on the problem than try to solve the problem. So let's go back to that and actually talk real solutions and come together to solve this issue instead of doing what they're doing and trying to distract America with mass deportations, while at the same time, their billionaires and the cronies and the top 1% are slowly turning our government into a piggy bank for their own pockets.
What advice would you give or have you given to a school superintendent who asks you what they should do if ICE agents show up or other federal agents?
I had a meeting recently with my school superintendents, and we talked about some of the issues that they're dealing with. And I'm not going to get into too many specifics, but one of the big problems that they're having is, what do you do at the end of a school day when they release a child and there's nobody to release that child to?
Right.
What do you do?
What do you do?
That's what they're struggling with right now.
What's the answer?
We don't know yet, right? Because normally you would have emergency contact forms, next of kin, aunts and uncles, but they don't want to keep those records.
Data, right?
They don't want to keep that. So we're working with them, trying to figure out what they can do, what my office can be helpful in doing. But these are the types of real-life decisions that people are dealing with. That is the human impact of this. Call it what you want. Mass deportations, roundups. Real people are getting hurt. Children are getting hurt. And it's being done in our name, and we should speak up and call it out, because it's not helping our economy. It's not making us more safe. It's a moral stain on our country and our communities. and it also distracts from the real comprehensive reform that this country needs. It's not going to address border security. It's not going to address the visa problems that plague our economy and our communities.
I mean, do you look back at the last 4 years and wish that the strong messages you're delivering here now about aggressive deportation of violent criminals found to have committed crimes was more on the minds of voters when they obviously, and for all the things that Trump has done over the last week, that you can debate whether or not people thought he would actually fire every inspector general. I mean, I don't know. Maybe people didn't know that that's what he was going to do. But mass deportations is something he ran on so brazenly. His supporters waved signs that said mass deportations now, and he won. Is there any sort of reflection on the part of the Democratic Party about what parts of the immigration message got through to the voters and what parts didn't?
Well, we certainly were pretty ardent about Project 2025, calling this out as much as possible. And listen, Donald Trump and the folks that are making up his administration now campaigned on costs, the cost of eggs, the cost of bacon is what Vice President Vance loves to talk about. They're doing nothing on any of that. They're going up.
They've declared war on breakfast,
and here's something that I found really interesting. Vice President Vance did an interview over the weekend.
But can I interrupt you? And my question was about whether there's any reflection, if you're part of any conversations among Democrats. I mean, what you just articulated is where the country is. 87% of all Americans in a New York Times poll just ahead of Trump's inauguration want what you just said you want, which is that violent criminals who are here illegally are deported. Is there any reflective exercise in the Democratic Party to try to understand why voters didn't know that that's where folks like you?
Well, I can't speak writ large for the Democratic Party, right? I can talk about myself. I can talk about the people that I spend time with in Congress.
But are there no meetings? I mean, are you all not getting together?
Absolutely. We are
figure out what went wrong? I mean,
absolutely, we're doing that, right? You can't not win elections and not win a majority and be in this position and not do deep thought and introspection. And part of that is we have to be serious about the deep anger and frustration across America. Listen, I grew up in a working class family. I worked fast food to help support my family in high school. I worked construction to put my way through college, right? And the frustration about the lack of access to the American dream is real with the people that I grew up with, the people that I knew, the communities where I came from. I spent a good chunk of my youth in a small rural town, and it's rural towns like that that have been decimated. Right? The American dream, the ability to afford a home, to put money away for retirement, to send your kids to college, the notion that your children and your grandchildren's life will be better than yours is out of reach. Right? That is just not what's happening right now, and people are angry and justifiably upset about it. I'm upset about it.
Yeah.
Right? We spent 20 years fighting 2 wars, spending trillions of dollars and the blood of my friends in some cases for what? Right? So that is the frustration, and we have to come to terms with it, and we've got to engage with that.
But the idea that frustration, if X, right, if that's the frustration, then Trump feels like giving up. I mean, he doesn't have an answer for any of that pain.
Of course he doesn't have an answer for any of that pain. I mean, listen to what was happening over the weekend with Vice President Vance. Now, Vice President Vance and I actually have a lot in common growing up. Right? We both grew up in working class families. We grew up in small rural towns. We joined the military. We deployed overseas. And that kind of ends the similarities. Because he went in a vastly different direction than I went in. Right? And the lessons, now he became a private equity person, and he speaks like a private equity person. You listen to what they say. This is an administration full of oil and gas executives, private equity people, big tech people. And you ask those folks what the answer is to the problem, and they'll tell you more oil and gas production, more tax cuts for the wealthy, so we can have tax capital investment at the top. That's always what they say. That's always what they have said. Trickle-down economics. But guess what? It doesn't work. We know it doesn't work because we've tried it over and over again. In the last Trump administration, where they gave tax cuts for the top 1% and they said that would trickle down, over 80% of that went to stock buybacks and executive salaries. So, of course, they're not going to fix it. What we know is that when you invest in people, in education, in infrastructure, in the history of this country, it always makes people's lives better. That is our message. That is our answer, and we're going to talk about it. and we're going to address abuses like this mass deportation effort. We're going to focus on public safety and border security and real solutions to immigration reform.